If you want to explore the history of Kenya through the ages, including buildings and parks where you can learn about the glorious past of Kenya, the presence of these monuments of Kenya will take you on a walk through the country's rich history. I'm sure most of you have come across Dedan Kimathi statue, the Tom Mboya statue, and Ronald Ngala statue while traversing the street of Nairobi. But are these the only ones found within Nairobi? I'm here to explore and show you the in-depth of some of the iconic buildings and monuments within Nairobi and their exact location, and also to inform you some of their importance to the society.
It helps us as a generation to know where we're heading. One, learning from the history and going forward. Museums and monuments help us to read the actual data of what happened during that time.
Inatukumbusha wale waanzilishi wa hii taifa.
The National Archives and Documentation Service is situated at the edge of the Central Business District in downtown Nairobi along Moi Avenue next to Ambassador Hotel. The National Archives building contains a small but interesting museum that's spread across 2 floors. Joseph Murumbi Gallery is situated at the ground floor of the Kenya National Archives building, and it is named after Joseph Murumbi, who was the 2nd Vice President of Kenya.
The National Archives basically is an institution within the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Culture. It was established in 1965 as a National Archives, mostly to preserve, for the purposes of preservation of public records and public archives. So essentially, our work is to preserve the public records and public archives throughout Kenya. It's actually the history keeper. We keep all the history of this country.
The Nairobi Gallery is located at Kenyatta Avenue and Uhuru Highway roundabout next to Nyayo House. The building is situated at Kenya's Point Zero, from where distances to all corners of the country and subsequently to the continent and the world were measured from. The building is part of the original master plan of the government buildings around what is now Kenyatta Avenue. Built in 1913 to house the Native Ministry, this building was fondly referred by the settlers community as hatches, marches and dispatches because of the birth, marriages, deaths that were conducted here. Before independence, the building was a colonial courthouse where native accused of entering Nairobi without a pass were tried and sentenced. After independence, the house was used by provincial commissioner as the Nairobi Provincial Office until 1983 when they relocated to Nyayo House. Today, the gallery has become the home of Joseph and Sheila's Murumbi collections. Joseph Murumbi was Kenya's 2nd Vice President. The Nairobi Gallery is an example of Victorian architecture. The exterior of the building is decorated with columns of niches, friezes and pediments of natural stones. Original entrance of the building leads to the Point Zero location from where all distances to all corners of the country were measured from.
So we are now at Kenya's Point Zero. All distances across the country were measured from this point. And to mark this point, we have a pot seated here by one of our own, Magdalene Odundo, a ceramist. We have jewelry by the Dogon from Mali. And in this showcase, it mainly shows the life of Murumbi. On top here is a photograph of Joseph Murumbi's mother. She was a Maasai lady.
The Nairobi Gallery has 2 old safes that were used by the colonial government and have never been opened since they left.
We have 2 safes which were believed to have never been opened ever since the colonial administration. So up to date, we do not know what is kept inside there. It's still a misery.
The Nairobi Gallery Museum and National Monument is part of the National Museums of Kenya. Nairobi Gallery is very important in several aspects. The first one is the architecture is very unique, what we call the Victorian architecture. This kind of architecture we don't see a lot nowadays. It's also a space which marks the first place where distances were marked from Nairobi to other parts of the country.
The historic Kipande House, built in 1913, is located at the corner of Kenyatta Avenue and Loita Street in Nairobi's Central Business District. Kipande is a Swahili word that means identification card. Henry Belfield, who was Kenya's governor between 1912 and 1917, ordered the building to be used for issuing identity cards only to Africans. Local Africans who wanted to be employed or do business in Nairobi had to first be registered and given identity cards. Interestingly enough, many people don't know that Kipande House was Nairobi's tallest building until the City Hall was completed in 1935. Kipande House was built by foreigners and was famous for its magnificent clock tower that was visible across the city. The Macmillan Library is a public library situated in Nairobi, Kenya. It is the oldest library in Nairobi and the second oldest in Kenya after Saif bin Salim Library in Mombasa. The library was built by Macmillan family to celebrate William Northrop Macmillan, who died in 1925. The building is a neoclassical design featuring granite-clad columns. There are two lion statue guards at either side of the entrance, which were donated by Sir John and Lady Harrington, cousins of Macmillan. The library holds more than 400,000 books, including East African newspaper and periodicals dating back to 1901. The Macmillan Memorial Library is the only library in Kenya protected by a specific Act of Parliament. The library was handed over to Nairobi City Council and was opened to general public in 1962.
Macmillan itself was started in 1931. It was built by Lady Macmillan in memory of the husband.
I have come to Macmillan Library to pursue my studies. So far, I love my experience. The library provides a good environment for students who would love to come and study.
The National Museums of Kenya is a state corporation established by an Act of Parliament, the Museums and Heritage Act of 2006. It is a multidisciplinary institution whose role is to collect, preserve, study, document and present Kenya's past and present cultural and national heritage.
The National Museums of Kenya is a multidisciplinary state corporation that was established through the Act of Parliament, National Museums and Heritage Act 2006. Its core mandate is to document, collect, preserve our cultural and natural heritage for posterity.
Of importance to note, monuments and museums are of great significance, and it's the responsibility of every individual to protect, explore and also learn the history of Kenya before and after independence. It is no doubt that Kenya is rich in its natural and cultural diversity.